When the judge looks squarely at you and says you are hereby sentenced to 37 years in jail, that number will haunt you in your dreams. So when UK rapper KO sits down behind his prison cell doors and plays the beat on his PlayStation, filters out all those stifled and forced laughter and bravado of other inmates on the landing who are trying to convince themselves that prison is no big deal, then puts pen to paper, he will have to formulate and then articulate his thought process behind giving up a polarising and potentially profitable career as a UK rapper in order to seek retribution and go on a quote-unquote ride-out in the name of the 9/8 gang, which is part of the E9/Harley Street gang. So disillusioned with being a bad man or a GM, KO had all the tools necessary to be one of the biggest artists in the UK. He could have single-handedly changed the trajectory of his low-income or working-class family and taken them out of London to Herefordshire or Surrey, where they could have lived an affluent life, away from the drama and rigmarole of London gang politics and moped thieves and also watch snatchers. Instead, KO had not only been found guilty of the M of rival Kacey Boothe, but was also found guilty of conspiracy to M a separate man who was the intended target, that being Khalid Samantar, and also possession of a gun with intent. In sentencing, the judge also commented that KO had included specific information relating to the brutal care of Kacey Boothe in his own song Laughing Stock. That song was released just 20 days after the M. That information was not in the public domain. The lyrics used included Big Boothe and Little Boothe got with the same sig, that's a sour family, both got at functions, neck and head, hand GUNs come handy. Kacey Booth's brother Kyle Boothe had also been struck with ammo with the same GUN in August of 2020. In fact, police say that the same pistol had been used in at least 7 separate incidences in the previous 2 years, which meant that the GUN was a community commodity between the Homerton gangs. If KO does not lie to himself, then he knows for a fact that he let himself down and his family. 37 years mean that by the time KO is released from jail, the 26-year-old would be in his early 60s if he serves the full term. The man known as KO would have been an afterthought. He would revert back to his real name, Kamar Henry Richards. The likelihood is the 9/8 will be dismantled, Zero Tolerance and London Fields would be disintegrated, friends would have either been jailed, dead or married or civilians, and KO would still be behind jail doors 2 up with another man in close quarters. UK rapper KO, real name Kamar Henry Richards, was jailed for life for his role in the M of rival Kacey Boothe. Now Kacey Boothe was said to have been a rival who went by the name of Boothe, and he was an integral part of the London-based Zero Tolerance and also London Fields gang, based in Hackney. Now Kacey was a GM, but he was also a son and a dad to 2 children, and at 25 years old he had a lot to live for, but that ended abruptly on August 13th of 2022. In an extensively pre-planned and orchestrated motive, KO and 3 friends that included fellow 9/8 rapper Hitman sourced a semi-automatic pistol, a SIG, and the K's then planned to K Khalid Samantar, who was a close friend of Boothe. Now he was the intended target, as I said before, and there was a communal agreement between everyone involved. Khalid Samantar was targeted because he was an associate of ZT and also London Fields gang, and it was alleged that he was part of 2 separate instances where Jeffrey Gimmer and Jal Pateko T had been struck with ammo and also bladed. So, in retribution, KO and his gang agreed that they needed to get Khalid back, and if they couldn't get Khalid, then any other member or associates of London Fields or ZT would be K'd as collateral. Now, so far displaced from normal human etiquette, Kamar Henry Richards, along with 24-year-old Kamani Bright Donaldson, 21-year-old Jeffrey Gimmer, and 27-year-old Jal Pateko T, had actively decided the right time to commit an M would be at a child's first birthday party. KO and mates had received intel that Khalid was hosting his first child's birthday party at the Peterhouse Community Centre in Walthamstow, North East London, on August 13th of 2022. The court also heard that Khalid knew there was an intense rivalry taking place, and it was active between 9/8's KO and the wider E9ers and the gang Boothe and Khalid associated with, being London Fields, the same gang that Margs, Hypo, Asco, J Spades had polarised. So active was the rivalry that 2 weeks before the of Boothe, Khalid's own neighbour, Amdi Rahman Gilani, had been struck with ammo by a trig man while he sat in his car with his brother. The neighbour had been struck to the right side of his chest, which tore through his lungs before it collapsed, and the inside was left pooling with red. It was a sheer miracle that the neighbour actually survived. Now, still wrapped in a false sense of security because these guys were all part of a gang, in the days leading up to the M, KO and others had placed multiple phone calls to each other, while one person who says they've secured a stolen car used to take the men to the crime scene. KO had actually placed calls to Jake Chapman to previously secure at least 2 fake plates that would be used on the car, and that would be a Jaguar E-Pace. KO, Joe and Kamani and Jeffrey had then all met up at a cafe in Leytonstone called the Sant Marino in order to fine-tune their plan, and they had a checklist per se that included the GUN secured, stolen car secured, masks and dark clothing. KO, along with Joe and Jeffrey, had then taken the Jaguar E-Pace and then drove the car to Forest Rise, where the party had just begun in the afternoon. The Jaguar was seen making laps around the residential area. Now, the gang had known that children were in attendance with their parents, but still KO and others decided to go through with their plan to commit an M. Now, Khalid Samantha was also spotted with their 1-year-old child too. So KO and the others had sat in the E-Pace in full view of the community centre. At an estimated time of 9 p.m, partygoers then slowly began to exit the community centre before mingling on the street, saying their goodbyes. The scrum of family and friends had then begun to walk away to their cars, and that included Kacey Boothe. When Kacey Boothe was next to his car, completely unprepared for the fact that in a matter of seconds he would be confronted by a trig man at almost point-blank range, Kacey then sat in his car. At 9:21 p.m, an unidentified man had exited the Jaguar E-Pace, and they went straight for Kacey Booth's car. Witnesses described the trig man wearing a mask and had his hood up and was wearing black clothing, and his hand was in the waistband. He then went straight up to the driver's side window, and without hesitation, without warning, the GUN was taken out, arm outstretched, and Kacey Boothe was then struck with ammo at point-blank range. Once, twice, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 times. The trig man then ran off towards the Jaguar E-Pace before every member of the E9-based gang had escaped the scene in the stolen car that had driven away at speed with the lights off. Friends had quickly drove Kacey to the hospital, but his injuries were considered catastrophic. After all, Boothe had been struck with ammo in the chest, face, neck and arm. Teeth, tongue, the floor of his mouth were completely damaged from the incident. Doctors noticed that Kacey had also been struck in the legs, and he was soon pronounced dead. Within 24 hours, the Jaguar E-Pace had then been disposed of by Darren Miller and John Hart. And when KO and Hitman and others were arrested by police had already taken witness statements and had taken information off their mobile phones, and that put all the men in Walthamstow at the time of the M, and also KO's own lyrics from the song Laughing Stock was used to build a case against the E9-based gang. In a trial that lasted 10 weeks, all 4 men were found guilty and were convicted of conspiracy to M another man, conspiracy to possess a GUN with intent, and also the M of Kacey Boothe. Kamani Brightly Donaldson had been jailed for life with a minimum term of 38 years. Kamar Henry Richards was jailed for life with a minimum term of 37 years. Jal Pateko T was also jailed for life and handed a minimum term of 35 years. Just before sentencing at the Old Bailey, witnesses also says, whom had watched the proceedings, that KO and his mates were all laughing and sharing jokes prior to sentencing. However, their mood quickly changed once their jail sentence had been read out. Now, it has to be said that no one actually knows who was the trig man. It could have been one of these 4 guys, or it could have been a separate person. That person, however, again has not been identified, so they all have to share the blame. Does the crime match the sentence? Let me know in the comments. Stay safe, and of course, condolences.